Modern macroeconomics relies on the reification of abstractions, treating the market, the state, and the enterprise as cold, autonomous machines. These entities are actually cohorts of living human beings, 10-dimensional ontological nodes organized around specific operational mandates. These cohorts consist of the engineers, architects, and grid operators who manage the world's compute, silicon, energy, and logistics. Moving to a macro-systemic worldview requires us to see through these institutional labels and track the high-velocity human interactions beneath them. Failing to map these human cohorts correctly obscures the systemic friction that causes global supply chain failures. We map 4 strata. 1D cyber logic intersects 7D physical grids and 4D sovereign law, anchored by the 10D human swarm. Operating across asynchronous horizons, millisecond AI colliding with 7-year grid queues causes systemic schizophrenia and tetratic bleed, climate disasters, housing crises, and market volatility. We record trillion-dollar economic losses to measure this friction, tracking the literal cost of trapped energy within a fractured system. Modern agentic AI and ubiquitous compute are scale-free technologies. Because they consist of one-dimensional algorithmic logic, they possess no physical weight. Developers author this logic in greenfields, sterile development environments that lack any connection to physical grid thermodynamics or sovereign laws. When sterile ambition hits the physical truth of the Earth, it creates a 10-7-5-4-1 rupture. The logic shatters against constraints it wasn't designed to see. This happens when a hyperscaler attempts to deploy a $10 billion AI data center. The one-dimensional ambition is immediately paralyzed by a 5-year physical grid queue and polycentric state laws. The capital is trapped in a ghost queue. Algorithmic ambition cannot execute without structural shock absorbers that account for physical and sovereign reality. The tech industry relies on the Meta-Training Fallacy, the belief that centralizing global data into a single lake allows a model to perfectly manage the Earth. In reality, 10-dimensional data is hyper-localized. You cannot mathematically average the ecological limits of a river with the specific laws of a sovereign territory. Centralizing this data removes the nuance, leaving the model with a useless statistical ghost of reality. This extraction model also triggers legal collapse. Sovereign nations are increasingly using data localization laws to protect their information behind a hard sovereign boundary. As predictive models lose access to this data, global routing shatters. This creates the splinter net, the rapid deglobalization where technology can no longer cross borders. Global supply chains break because we try to pull reality up to the machine rather than pushing the machine down to the localized truth. The P3C architecture reverses this flow. Raw data stays behind the firewall. Blank one-dimensional capability moves down to meet it. In-situ compute drops capability behind the firewall, executes in RAM, and mints a zero-knowledge proof. A cryptographic flush wipes the RAM clean, leaving source data untouched. Holographic reassembly then pulls these anonymized proofs to reconstruct a 360-degree map of global supply chain bottlenecks. The 157 taxonomic matrix acts as the Rosetta Stone for this process, mathematically translating legacy corporate contracts and thermodynamic limits into a shared semantic grammar. This provides the secure orchestration required to reverse deglobalization and stream technology across sovereign borders. Traditional clearinghouses treat T+0 settlement as the absolute conclusion of a transaction. In a kinetic economy, T+0 ignition is the starting point for autopoietic recursion, a continuous cycle of co-creation and maintenance between the machine and the grid. When cohorts synchronize their physical and sovereign constraints at the millisecond of execution, the sunk cost of multi-year planning friction disappears. We define yield as the literal physical exergy and thermodynamic energy saved when this friction is removed. This kinetic yield provides cryptographic proof that reality was successfully synchronized across the network. By quantifying the energy saved through coordination, yield replaces speculative fiat debt as the foundational mechanism of systemic trust. With systemic friction resolved, supranational capability primes cease acting as top-down dictators. They are demoted to a horizontal routing layer that serves the local ecosystem. This topological inversion causes vertical 20th-century hierarchies to collapse upward. Centralized monopolies dissolve as intelligence generation moves to the local edge. shifting organizational gravity to the community. The sovereign shield automates into frictionless policy as code, delegating legal compliance to the machine. This results in the 10-7-1 continuum. The architecture allows human intent at the 10th dimension to interact directly with the 7th dimensional biological substrate. This structural evolution ensures that as we expand toward an exoscale economy, our cosmic ambition remains tethered to planetary equity rather than extractive models. The machine becomes a supportive exoskeleton designed to facilitate the symbiosis of the human, the Earth, and the machine.